The smell hit them first. 20,000 rotting corpses don't just assault your eyes, they invade every sense, forcing battle-hardened Ottoman soldiers to vomit where they stood. As Sultan Mehmed II, the man who conquered Constantinople itself, rode toward the Wallachian capital, he expected to find a city preparing for siege. Instead, he found something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. A forest. But not of trees. Of human beings impaled on stakes, their bodies in various stages of decay, some still twitching after days of agony. At the centre, on the tallest stake, wearing ceremonial robes, was Hamza Pasha, Mehmed's own general. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover the most horrifying truth about the real Dracula. Evidence that medieval chroniclers tried to hide about a man so brutal, so creatively sadistic, that hardened conquerors fled at the sight of his work. But here's what makes this even more disturbing. This wasn't mythology. This wasn't fiction. This was a real man who discovered that the human body can survive on a stake for 3 full days if you're careful enough. And I'm about to reveal exactly how he learned this skill, and why a childhood in chains created the most terrifying ruler in European history. Winter 1431, Sigishora, Transylvania. In a stone house marked with a dragon, a woman screams through childbirth. The baby that emerges into the world will one day make 20,000 people scream far worse. They name him Vlad, after his father, but history will know him by the thing he did best: impale human beings. His father, Vlad II Dracula, is a member of the Order of the Dragon, a Christian military order dedicated to defending Europe from Ottoman invasion. Dracula means dragon in Romanian. His son would be called Dracula, son of the dragon. But that's not the name that would strike terror across 2 continents. No, that name would come from his favourite method of execution. Think about the world this child was born into. The Ottoman Empire is expanding westward like a plague. Christian kingdoms fall one by one. Constantinople, the jewel of the Byzantine Empire that had stood for over 1,000 years, is about to fall. Between the Muslim Ottoman Empire and Christian Europe lies Wallachia, a small principality that serves as a bloody buffer zone. This is where young Vlad learns his first lessons about power. It comes from fear, and fear comes from pain. But to understand how a prince became a monster, we need to expose the moment his childhood ended. And I warn you, what happened to an 11-year-old boy in an Ottoman fortress explains everything that came after. Sultan Mehmed II summons Vlad Dracula for a diplomatic meeting. It's a trap, but Dracula has no choice. He brings his 2 youngest sons, 11-year-old Vlad and 7-year-old Radu. The moment they cross into Ottoman territory, they're arrested. The Sultan offers Dracula a deal. Leave your sons as hostages to guarantee your loyalty, or watch them die in front of you. What would you choose, your freedom or your children? Dracula chooses freedom. He rides away, leaving his sons in Ottoman hands. Vlad watches his father's figure disappear into the distance. It's the last moment of his childhood. The Ottoman court claims they treat noble hostages well. Education in languages, philosophy, military tactics. And for Radu, Vlad's beautiful younger brother, this is true. Radu thrives. He converts to Islam. He becomes the Sultan's favourite. Some whisper he becomes more than that. But Vlad? Vlad refuses to bend. He spits at his Turkish tutors. He refuses to learn the Quran. He attacks other hostages who insult Christianity. And for this defiance, he pays. The Turks have methods for breaking stubborn children. The falaka, beating the soles of the feet until they split open. The bastinado, hanging upside down while guards strike the body with sticks. Starvation, isolation, darkness. But here's the detail historians don't want you to know. During his captivity, Vlad is forced to watch something that will define his future: Ottoman executions, specifically impalements. The Turks use it for special enemies, those who deserve not just death, but days of public agony. Young Vlad watches as prisoners are forced to sit on oiled stakes, their own body weight slowly driving the wood through their insides. He sees how the stake must be blunt, not sharp to avoid piercing vital organs too quickly. He learns that if you angle it correctly, the stake travels alongside the spine, emerging through the shoulder or mouth, keeping the victim alive for days. He's 12 years old, watching people die by inches, filing away every detail. Meanwhile, back in Wallachia, everything collapses. His father plays all sides, Christians, Ottomans, Hungarians, trying to keep his throne. It doesn't work. In 1447, Wallachian nobles allied with Hungarian regent John Hunyadi ambush Vlad Dracula in the marshes near Baltani. They hack him to pieces, but they save something special for Vlad's older brother Mircea. The boyars, Wallachian nobles, capture Mircea alive. First, they blind him with hot irons. Then, while he's still screaming, still alive, they bury him. The man who should have been Vlad's protector dies choking on dirt, clawing at the earth above him. When word reaches the Ottoman court, 16-year-old Vlad receives the news with strange calm. His captors expect tears, rage, something. Instead, he simply asks, "How long did my brother take to die underground?" The Ottomans don't realise they're looking at a creature they've created. 6 years of torture haven't broken Vlad. They've transformed him. Every beating, every humiliation, every forced viewing of impalement has been teaching him not how to submit, how to inflict. The Ottomans decide Vlad might be useful. They release him with a small force to claim his father's throne. His first reign lasts 2 months before he's driven out. But those 2 months give us a preview of what's coming. Even then, 17-year-old Vlad shows unusual cruelty. A merchant complains about theft. Vlad has the suspect's feet skinned and salt rubbed into the raw flesh. But this is just practice. The real horror is still brewing. For 8 years, Vlad serves in various armies, learning the art of war. He fights alongside the man who killed his father, John Hunyadi, because revenge can wait, but knowledge cannot. He studies fortification, cavalry tactics, psychological warfare. Most importantly, he builds a network of supporters who share his hatred of both Ottomans and treacherous boyars. Vlad's moment arrives. With Hungarian support, he invades Wallachia again. The current ruler, Vladislav II, meets him in single combat. According to legend, Vlad doesn't just kill him, he beheads him slowly, sawing through the neck while Vladislav still lives. Now here's where the story takes a turn from violent to genuinely monstrous. Easter Sunday, 1457. Vlad invites hundreds of boyar families to a feast at his palace in Târgoviște. These are the people who betrayed his father, who buried his brother alive. They come dressed in their finest clothes, believing the new prince wants peace. The feast is magnificent. Wine flows, music plays. Then Vlad stands and asks a simple question. How many princes have you seen rule Wallachia in your lifetime? The boyars, wine-drunk and honest, give various answers. Some say 5, others 20. A few elderly nobles admit to serving 30 different princes. Each admission is a confession. They've survived by switching sides, by betraying every ruler when convenient. Vlad nods thoughtfully. Then he gives a signal. Soldiers burst through every door. In minutes, hundreds of boyars are chained. Vlad orders the old and infirm impaled on the spot, in the courtyard where they can be seen from the feast hall. The screaming begins immediately. But for the young and strong, he has different plans. Still in their Easter finery, they march north to a ruined castle. For months, they're forced to rebuild Pinari Castle, stone by stone. They work until their fine clothes rot off their bodies, then work naked. When they collapse, they're impaled. This is just the beginning. I've discovered documents that show what happened next, shocked even medieval standards of cruelty. But first, if you're finding these hidden historical horrors as disturbing as I did, hit that subscribe button. I uncover the dark truths about history every week, and trust me, Vlad's story gets so much worse. Now let me tell you about the incident that gave him his infamous nickname, 1459 Brasov. This Saxon merchant city has been harbouring Vlad's enemies and rival claimants to the throne. Vlad sends a warning. The city ignores it. So Vlad brings 20,000 soldiers and shows them what happens when you ignore the dragon's son. He doesn't just attack the city, he transforms it into a gallery of horror. The Basilica Niagara, the Black Church, gets its name from the fires Vlad sets. But fire is merciful compared to what else he does. Men, women, children, all impaled in neat rows, babies impaled on the same stake as their mothers, positioned at the breast as if nursing, pregnant women with stakes driven through their wombs. But here's the part that separates Vlad from ordinary tyrants. He has a table set up in the middle of this forest of dying humans. Servants bring him a full meal, roasted meat, fresh bread, wine. Vlad sits and eats while surrounded by thousands of people in various stages of dying. The moaning, the screaming, the begging, it's dinner music to him. One of his boyars can't handle it. The man covers his nose against the stench of blood and evacuated bowels. Vlad notices. "Does it stink to you?" he asks pleasantly. The boyar admits it does. Vlad has him impaled on a stake twice as high as the others. "You'll be above the smell up there," he explains. Medieval chroniclers record something else about this meal, something so disturbing that most historians skip over it. According to both German and Russian sources, Vlad dips his bread in the blood pooling beneath the stakes. He develops a taste for it. Blood-soaked bread becomes his preferred meal during mass executions. The numbers alone are staggering. Conservative estimates put Vlad's death toll at 40,000. Others say 80,000. But in a principality with only 500,000 people, he may have killed 20% of his own population. That's proportionally more than Stalin or Pol Pot. But unlike those dictators, Vlad didn't delegate. He personally supervised. He innovated. You see, basic impalement wasn't enough for Vlad. He developed variations. Stakes through the mouth for liars, through the skull for thieves, driven in slowly with hammers so the victim lived longer. Women who committed adultery had stakes driven through their vaginas, emerging through their mouths. He impaled people upside down, sideways, in patterns that spelled out messages. Two things happen that push Vlad from cruel ruler to complete monster. First, he remarries. His first wife's name is lost to history, but we know he had to secure his succession. Second, Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II demands tribute. Not just gold. 500 boys for the Janissary Corps, children to be converted to Islam and trained as soldiers. Vlad's response? He sends the Sultan a message. Come and get them yourself. When Ottoman envoys arrive to collect the tribute, they refuse to remove their turbans in Vlad's presence, citing religious custom. Vlad congratulates them on their devotion. Then he has their turbans nailed to their skulls with 3-inch iron spikes. They're sent back to Constantinople still alive, still wearing their holy headgear, now permanently attached. The Sultan sends an army led by Hamza Pasha. Vlad ambushes them at night, capturing thousands. Every single prisoner is impaled. But for Hamza Pasha, Vlad prepares something special. The general is castrated first, his genitals stuffed in his mouth. Then he's impaled on a gold-covered stake, because even in torture, rank must be respected. This brings us to 1462, and the event that would cement Vlad's reputation forever. Sultan Mehmed II, called the Conqueror after taking Constantinople, personally leads an army of 150,000 men into Wallachia. Some sources say 300,000. Vlad has maybe 30,000. Including old men and boys, he can't win a direct battle, so he doesn't fight directly. As the Ottoman army advances, they find a wasteland. Vlad has burned every field, poisoned every well, evacuated every village. The Turks march through ash and silence. But that's not the worst part. Vlad sends diseased prostitutes into the Ottoman camps. Men infected with plague infiltrate their ranks. The mighty Ottoman army begins dying before any battle starts. June 17th, 1462, the night attack. With a small force of his best cavalry, Vlad infiltrates the Ottoman camp under cover of darkness. The goal? Assassinate Mehmed in his tent and end the invasion with one stroke. Vlad personally leads the charge, cutting through guards, searching for the Sultan's pavilion. But in the darkness and chaos, they hit the wrong tent. Instead of Mehmed, they find the Grand Vizier. The assassination fails. Vlad and his men barely escape as the entire Ottoman camp mobilizes. The next day, Mehmed continues toward Târgoviște, Vlad's capital. The gates are open. No defenders on the walls. The Sultan suspects a trap, advances carefully, then they see it. Wait, before I describe the most horrific scene in military history, you need to understand the scale. For miles around the city, covering 7 acres, stand wooden stakes. 20,000 of them, and on each stake a human being in various stages of death and decay. Men, women, children. Turks captured in previous battles. Bulgarian Muslims who supported the Ottomans. Wallachian traitors. Some have been dead for weeks, their bodies black with rot, crows picking at exposed flesh. Others, impaled more recently, still move weakly, still moan. The geometry is deliberate. The stakes are arranged in concentric circles like a grotesque garden. The tallest stakes in the centre hold the highest-ranking victims. Hamza Pasha's gold stake glints in the middle, his body long dead but still wearing ceremonial armour. The smell makes hardened soldiers vomit. The sight makes them weep. These are men who've conquered cities, who've seen Byzantine Constantinople fall. But this is beyond warfare. This is madness given form. The Sultan, Mehmed the Conqueror, the man who ended the 1,000-year Byzantine Empire, looks at this forest of the dead and speaks the words that will echo through history. I cannot take the land of a man who does such things. What can one do against such a demon? He turns his army around. The man who never retreated retreats. But here's the truly disturbing part. Vlad considers this his masterpiece. While Mehmed flees, Vlad walks among the stakes like an artist in his gallery. He adjusts bodies that have slipped. He notes which angles of impalement last longest. This isn't just psychological warfare, this is pleasure. One captured Turkish chronicle, often omitted from sanitized histories, records that Vlad would visit the impalement fields at night, alone. He would sit among the dying and listen to their moans like music. He would touch the stakes to feel the vibrations of struggling bodies. He would bring wine and toast the dying. This is who Vlad really was. Not a patriot defending Christianity, not a harsh but necessary ruler, but a man who found joy in human suffering extended to its absolute limit. The Ottomans leave, but they leave behind Vlad's brother Radu with troops. Remember beautiful Radu, the one who thrived in Ottoman captivity? He offers Wallachians a choice: support him and live in peace, or stick with the impaling madman. It's not a hard choice. Vlad's own nobles abandon him. His army melts away. By August 1462 he's fleeing to Hungary, seeking help from King Matthias Corvinus. But Matthias has been in communication with the Ottomans. When Vlad arrives, he's arrested and imprisoned. For 12 years he rots in Hungarian captivity. But even in prison, the sickness remains. Guards report finding dead rats carefully impaled on splinters in Vlad's cell, small birds skewered on sharpened quills. He creates miniature impalement fields with insects pinned to pieces of wood. When asked why, he simply says he doesn't want to lose his skill. Think about that. 12 years in a cell, and his primary concern is maintaining his technique for torturing living things. The guards are so disturbed they stop bringing him anything that could be sharpened. Politics shift. Hungary needs allies against the Ottomans again. Vlad is released, even given a Hungarian noble bride. He converts to Catholicism, a political move, and receives troops to reclaim Wallachia. His third reign begins in 1476. He's older now, in his 40s, but the cruelty hasn't aged. If anything, imprisonment has fermented it into something worse. The impalements resume immediately, but now he adds psychological torture. He forces families to watch each other being impaled in order. Children first, then mothers, then fathers. He develops a method of impaling that keeps victims alive for up to a week. One story from this period is so grotesque that even contemporary chroniclers hesitated to record it. A group of Turkish prisoners are brought before Vlad. He has them impaled in a specific pattern, shorter stakes in front, taller behind, creating an amphitheatre of agony. In the centre, he has a pregnant woman impaled vertically. As she dies over hours, she gives birth on the stake. The baby, of course, dies immediately. Vlad watches the entire process, taking notes on how long each stage takes. This is not warfare. This is not even madness. This is evil so pure it defies comprehension. December 1476. Vlad is marching with a small force when he's ambushed by Ottoman troops. The details vary. Some say he was assassinated by his own men, tired of serving a monster. Others say the Turks overwhelmed him. What we know is this: Vlad the Impaler dies in battle, his head severed from his body. The Turks take his head to Constantinople, where Sultan Mehmed II has it displayed on a stake above the city gates. There's poetry in that. The Impaler finally impaled, if only in death. His body is supposedly buried at Snagov Monastery, but when archaeologists opened his supposed tomb in 1931, they found it empty. Some say monks, horrified by burying such evil, moved the body. Others whispered darker theories, but Vlad's death doesn't end his story. You might think I'm about to talk about Bram Stoker and vampire legends. I'm not, because the real horror of Vlad's legacy isn't fiction, it's fact. In Romania today, Vlad is considered a national hero. Yes, you heard that correctly. The man who murdered 80,000 people, who dined on blood-soaked bread while watching children die on stakes, who impaled babies to their mothers' breasts. This man has statues. His face is on tourist merchandise. Romanian nationalists praise him as a defender of Christianity, a bulwark against Islamic invasion. They focus on his resistance to the Ottomans and ignore the screaming forests of the dead. They celebrate his harsh justice. He supposedly made Wallachia so safe that a golden cup could be left at a public fountain without being stolen. They don't mention that safety came from terror so absolute that people were afraid to breathe wrong. This is the real horror. Not that monsters exist, but that we rehabilitate them. That we find ways to excuse the inexcusable because the monster was on our side. Vlad didn't impale 20,000 Turks because he was defending Christianity. He impaled them because he enjoyed it. He impaled Christians too. He impaled anyone who gave him an excuse, and when he ran out of excuses he made them up. Medieval rulers were brutal by necessity, But Vlad was brutal by choice, by preference, by pleasure. Other rulers of his time used execution as a tool. Vlad used it as entertainment. Other rulers killed enemies. Vlad killed randomly. Merchants who looked at him wrong. Women who cooked meals he didn't like. Children who cried too loud. He once impaled a group of foreign ambassadors for being too well dressed, saying their finery insulted Wallachian simplicity. The German tales speak of Vlad encountering a peasant with a torn shirt. He asks if the man has a wife. Yes, the peasant says. Vlad has the wife impaled for not properly caring for her husband's clothing. Then he gives the man a new wife with a warning. Keep your husband better dressed or join your predecessor. This wasn't justice. This was a man so damaged by childhood trauma, so twisted by years of watching Ottoman cruelty, that he became worse than his tormentors. The Ottomans impaled enemies. Vlad impaled everyone. The Ottomans used torture for information or punishment. Vlad used it for pleasure. Modern psychologists studying historical records classify Vlad as a sadistic psychopath with probable sexual dysfunction. Many of his specific impalement methods targeted sexual organs. They note his childhood trauma, his forced observation of torture, his powerlessness as a hostage. Classic serial killer development, except this serial killer had an army and a country. But perhaps the most chilling detail comes from those who knew him personally. They describe a man who was cultured, intelligent, even charming when he chose. He spoke multiple languages, wrote poetry, understood theology and philosophy. He wasn't a mindless brute. He was worse, a brilliant mind that chose to use its gifts for creating the most exquisite suffering possible. Russian chronicles describe foreign merchants visiting Vlad's court. He treats them well, shows them hospitality. Then, as they're leaving, he mentions casually that he had their servants impaled while they dined just to see if they'd notice. They didn't. He laughs and lets them discover the bodies on their way out. This is what true evil looks like. Not raving madness, but calm, calculated cruelty delivered with a smile. In his final letter, written days before his death, Vlad complains that his Hungarian allies don't let him impale as freely as he'd like. Even facing a massive Ottoman invasion, his main concern is that he can't torture enough people. That's who Vlad really was, a man so addicted to human suffering that limiting his torture quota was worse than military defeat. When that Turkish sword finally took his head, it wasn't killing a defender of Christendom. It was exterminating a rabid animal that happened to wear a crown. The real Dracula didn't fear crosses or sunlight. He didn't drain blood with fangs. He did something worse. He proved that with enough childhood trauma and unchecked power, a human being can become more monstrous than any myth. He showed us that the worst horrors don't come from supernatural creatures, but from damaged humans given the opportunity to spread their damage. 20,000 corpses rotting on stakes, babies dying on their mothers' breasts, children forced to watch parents impaled in order, pregnant women giving birth while dying on poles. This isn't legend, this isn't exaggeration, this is history, recorded by multiple sources from multiple nations, all painting the same picture of evil incarnate. But here's the final, most disturbing truth about Vlad the Impaler. He won. His terror tactics worked. The Ottomans hesitated to invade Wallachia for years after his death. His name became a curse that Turkish mothers used to frighten children. Behave, or Kazakla Voivoda will get you, the Impaler Prince. A man so terrible that even conquering armies turned back rather than face what he might do, and somewhere in that blood-soaked ground of Wallachia, in the earth that absorbed the bodily fluids of 80,000 impaled victims, something dark took root. Not vampirism. Reality doesn't need supernatural embellishment. But the idea that ultimate cruelty equals ultimate power, that fear is stronger than any army, that a single twisted individual can make empires retreat through sheer willingness to do what others won't. Vlad the Impaler didn't just kill people. He killed the idea that humans have limits to their cruelty. He proved that with enough trauma and power, anyone can become a devil. And he proved that sometimes devils win. The forest of corpses outside Targoviste wasn't just a war crime, it was a mission statement. It said, this is what a human being is capable of. This is what I am capable of, and I enjoy it. Mehmed the Conqueror, who had seen cities burn and empires fall, looked at that forest and saw something that conquering couldn't fix, something that winning couldn't cure. He saw the face of human evil stripped of all pretense, all justification, all humanity, and he ran. We should all run from men like Vlad, but instead, we put their faces on coins and call them heroes. We focus on their victories and ignore their victims. We pretend their ends justified their means. They didn't, they never do. And until we stop making heroes of monsters, we'll keep creating more Vlads, more forests of the impaled, more proof that the real Dracula doesn't need fangs, just power and a damaged soul. Vlad III died in winter 1476, his head decorating a Turkish spike. But his legacy, that humans can surpass any fictional monster in cruelty, that lives forever. Every dictator who uses terror, every killer who finds pleasure in pain, every damaged child who grows up to damage others, they're all children of Vlad the Impaler, the man who made hell on earth and called it justice. If Vlad's level of sadistic cruelty shocked you, wait until you discover what Gilles de Rais did to hundreds of children in his castle. Murders so horrific they make Vlad look merciful. Subscribe for more suppressed historical truths, and I'll see you in the next investigation.